Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Braden Knutson. I'll be your host for this webinar today. As I get going here through our announcements and our introduction, I am going to make this little pod available here. So if you have any questions for Kathryn, please enter those in here as I'm going through the announcements, and we'll get ready for the question and answer session. We're really excited. This is always a lot of fun when we do these, and they're really helpful. Also, if you get a chance, fill out the polls that we have on the screen as well. Let us know where you're listening from. It's always fun to see where everybody logs in from, and it's really neat, as well as how you heard about our webinars. It's always helpful for us to be able to focus our efforts and reach out to the most people possible. So some of the announcements that we have, Roots Tech is next week, so that goes from Wednesday through Saturday in Salt Lake City, Utah. If you go to Roots Tech, just Google Roots Tech, you can go to the website, and if you have not yet registered, it's really fun. We get people from all over the world, pretty much everything to do with family history and genealogy. If you can imagine it, it's probably going to be there. They've got classes you can sign up for, and it's a lot of stuff. I don't know exactly how much the cost is, but it's definitely worth it if you can get a chance to go. I know last year I got to meet some people that flew out all the way from Australia just to be at that conference, so it was really, really neat to meet those people and see that their interest in family history and the expo that they have there. It's really, really fun atmosphere, and you can learn a lot of stuff and meet a lot of cool people. Also, keep a lookout for our March webinar schedule. We're working on getting that ready to go for next month. Always trying to provide the best content for everyone, and if you ever have any suggestions, please email us. Our email is at the bottom of the announcements pod. It's fhl_webinars@byu.edu. I always love feedback. That's always appreciated. And we've had lots of feedback about people not being able to watch our YouTube videos inside of their local family history center or their ward church building. So we have a new viewing platform on our site that allows you to watch those videos and use them at your local family history center and ward building. At the moment, there's not a ton of videos there because it's new and we're kind of testing it still, but if there's a video that you need to use for a class or whatever, just send us an email and we'll make sure that gets uploaded to the site so that you can use it. And as always, we really love feedback. There is a link on that page specifically to a survey that you can fill out to help us make it better, and we really appreciate that feedback, and we always try to implement as much of it as possible. So today, as most of you know, hopefully, we are doing a FamilySearch Family Tree question and answer session with Kathryn Grant. And we really love these, and we really hope that we can answer your questions to the best of our abilities. If not, we'll make sure we answer them in upcoming webinars. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn started doing family history and discovered a new passion. Her specialty is mentoring new family historians and helping them find success, and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the LDS Church as a technical writer with a focus on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and homemade guacamole. And for those of you that are just joining us, please feel free to submit any questions that you have into this questions pod. We'll make sure we get as many of those answered as we can. Feel free to submit any comments as well above. We'd love to see those comments and any other insights that you might have. And Kathryn, if you're ready, feel free to take it away. Just let me know if you ever need any help, and I can make sure I'll be here to get questions for you.
Great. That sounds perfect. Braden, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. We're so glad to have you with us. As Braden mentioned, this is our Q&A webinar that we do from time to time. And I do have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. So I wanted to just show you what those were, and we'll go through those questions. And then any questions that you have, we would love to answer those if we can. And if I don't know the answer to it, I'll be very happy to try and find it out. So the questions that were submitted ahead of time are these. Rose asks, how do I fix duplicates with the same PID? And that's actually a tricky one, but a very interesting one. And I've known of multiple people that have come across that. The next question is, how can I tell if children are missing from a family? That comes from Bud. And then somebody asked, what is the value of adding sources in Family Tree? Another question, this one from Brenda, why and how do I standardize dates and places? And then after we get through those, we'll go through any questions that you have. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the problem that Rose sent me. So on this screen, you notice that we've got a couple of people, 3 people exactly, that are appearing more than once. We've got Joseph Fabing and his wife, and then we also have Kathryn, who is appearing twice, and you notice that they skip generations. So Rosa's question was, how do I merge these people? But the trouble is they aren't actually duplicates. Duplicates are records that represent the same person but have different PIDs. But you'll notice that these records have the same PIDs. So this Joseph right here ends in 6JC, so does this one. This Kathryn ends in DRT, and so does this one. Even though they look like duplicates on the screen, what's happening is that it's a relationship problem. Let me explain that a little bit more, because this is really a tricky thing. So notice that this Joseph, the 6JC, he appears as both the son of this Frederick and as the father. Now that may be okay for a song, but it doesn't work in real life, right? The same person can't biologically be a son of somebody and also be their grandpa. So one of these has to be incorrect. And when I checked with Rose, she said that the correct one, as you can kind of tell from the dates, is that Joseph is the father, but he somehow got incorrectly connected as a son to his son. So that's not right. So that's what we need to fix, is to fix the relationship, and then that will fix the display problem. Because right now it's almost like we're in a hall of mirrors, right? We've got Joseph, and I couldn't fit it all on the screen, but if I kept expanding this line right here, it kept going, like repeating the same people through the generations. So, whoops, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves there. Okay. So the key to fixing a wrong relationship is to fix it the time it appears closest to the present. So in other words, it's a lot more difficult to try and go backwards through time to fix the relationship. It works best if you find the first instance where it went wrong. And so the first instance where it went wrong here is that Joseph is connected to Frederick as a son. He's not his son. So the place that we have to fix that is actually the person page. So let's go over to the person page. And I could have fixed it from Joseph's page, but I chose to fix it from Frederick's page because it makes it obvious that he's showing up twice. So we've got Joseph here as a son, you notice appears here under this couple, but then we also have the same guy as a father. So what we want to do to fix that is click the Edit Parents icon next to Joseph. When I do that, I get this pop-up, and it gives me the option to either just remove Frederick or just remove Kathryn or remove both. This is another thing that's a little bit tricky, is it's not exactly obvious that clicking this link next to child would remove both parents or break the relationship with both parents. Sorry, to be clear, it doesn't remove them from Family Tree, but it just breaks the relationship. So if I click remove or replace next to Joseph, then that's going to remove both the incorrect father and mother at one time. So I click that, and then I get this kind of sanity check screen where it says, have you really checked everything out? So I need to check this checkbox here and say, yes, I have reviewed the relationships and sources, and I do know that it's right to break this relationship. So then I go ahead and click Remove Parents, and I get taken to this screen where it wants me to provide a reason for removing the parents. A lot of times people get to this screen and they're just not sure what to write, and so they skip it. but I would strongly encourage you not to skip this screen for a couple of reasons. One is that other people might have thought this was correct, and so this is your opportunity to explain why these parents really should be removed. Another reason is, and this just makes me laugh, is that I have come back to stuff that I've done maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Do you think I even remember what I did? Nah, it's so long gone, so far in the past. So taking these notes helps me as a researcher. It helps me remember what I did if I have to come back to this, months or years later. So I try to write as clear of an explanation as I can here, and I like to include the PIDs just because then there's no question which person I'm talking about. So I explain here that Joseph Fabing, L6BT6JC, is the father of Frederick, and I give the PID, but he's also been linked incorrectly as Frederick's son. So I'm removing these parents to break the incorrect relationship. Then I go ahead and click remove. And then look, we go back to the place where the pedigree loop was showing, and it's all fixed. We don't have any more Kathryn showing up multiple times, and Joseph and his wife are no longer showing as a son and daughter-in-law of Frederick. So that is how you fix a pedigree loop. While we're on that subject, I wanted to just comment quickly on another duplicate scenario that's similar but not exactly the same, but it also does tend to be puzzling. So look at what's happening on this screen. We've got Joseph Jackson Olive, who's showing up twice, and he's got the same PID. We've got his daughter, Mary, who's showing up twice. She's got the same PID both times. But now we take a look at the mom, Elizabeth. She's also showing up twice, but she has a different PID. So what is happening as far as the system is concerned? The system thinks that Mary has two sets of parents, Joseph with Elizabeth number 1 and Joseph with Elizabeth number 2. So you might be asking, how did this happen? It happened because a merge was done on Mary but wasn't finished for both her parents. The merge was done for Mary, the daughter. The merge was done for Joseph, the dad, but then for whatever reason, the mother didn't end up being merged. So the solution to the problem is actually not to merge Joseph or Mary. That wouldn't be possible because they actually are the same record. They're just being displayed twice because of the relationship. And if that isn't clear, please ask a question in the question pod. Again, this is kind of a tricky concept to get. But the solution here is to merge the two duplicate Elizabeths. As soon as we do that, this top section here will disappear, and there will be just one Joseph, one Elizabeth, and one Mary. Okay, let's move on to the next question from Bud. How can I tell if children are missing in a family? And that is such a great question because, of course, we want to be sure that we're getting all the members of the family so that they can be sealed together. And it's not always easy to find children who are missing from a family, especially if mainly what we're relying on are census records. Maybe we don't have access to birth records or they're not easily available. So let's talk about some general principles of how you would tell if children are missing from a family. Basically, what you want to do is determine when the couple could have children. And that is going to be essentially their marriage year until either the death of one of the spouses or the end of the woman's childbearing years. And then once you've determined that range of time when they likely could have had children, then you want to look for gaps between the marriage year and the first child, and then also gaps in between all known children. So as we look at this example of John Rose and his wife Eliza, You can tell when they probably would have started having children by their marriage date, which is 1843. Well, then Eliza dies quite young, actually. She was only 32 when she died in 1855. So that sets an upper limit to the time that John and Eliza would be having children together. As we look at the children that are recorded for them, we notice that there's about a 2-year gap between the marriage and the first child. Then also there's a gap between James's birth of 1847 and Eliza's death of 1855. So that tells us where we want to concentrate looking for these missing children between 1843 and 45 because of the marriage to the first child, and then also between 47 and 55, which would be between James's birth and Eliza's death. So as it happens, in this particular case, because this family lived in England, I was able to go to civil registration and find 3 of the missing children. One of them died between the censuses, and that's why we didn't know about her, but the civil registration did confirm that the mother's maiden name was Bescaby, and she was born in the right place, this sweet Jane, and so we knew she was a missing child. And notice also she fits logically in the family. She doesn't conflict with one of the other children or anything. She just kind of fits in the sequence. And then we have a Sarah Jane Rose. The interesting thing is Sarah also, I confirmed her in the civil registration as a daughter of this couple, but she didn't die till after the 61 census. So far, I haven't been able to locate her, but I think I know why, which I'll comment on that in just a second. Then finally, we found a Joseph who also was confirmed to be a son in this family. And notice that the sequence just fits with the pattern for this family, 49 to 51 to 53. The reason I think that I haven't found these 2 yet is that both Eliza and John died between 1851 and 1861. And so James, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe he was living with another family member after his parents died by the 61 census. I'm guessing that if I keep looking, I'm going to find Sarah Jane and Joseph living with other family members or possibly boarding with somebody. But I think that's why I haven't been able to find them. But anyway, this summarizes how you can tell basically if children might be missing in a family. It's not a guarantee that children are missing because sometimes women just had trouble getting pregnant. And so there are obviously cases where a woman might go years with, between children and there aren't any missing children. But at least if you go by that rule of starting with the marriage and then ending with either the death of one of the spouses or the woman's childbearing years, then at least you have a framework or a time frame in which you can search for those missing children. Okay, our next question, this one came from Allison. What is the value of adding sources in Family Tree? In order to answer that question, it's helpful to give a little bit of background. So there's a common misconception in the church that the church has put verified names into Family Tree, that they've done all the research and that we as users don't need to do any research at all, that those names are just perfect and they are what they are. But the truth is that names are contributed by ordinary users just like you and me. The church doesn't put names in Family Tree with some very rare exceptions. And those exceptions are generally things like medieval kings and queens that are back in, the 1500s and earlier. The church has put some of those in, and you'll notice if you go to some of those records that they are locked. We can't do temple work for them. We can't change those records. So those are the rare exceptions, but virtually all the other records in Family Tree were contributed by ordinary people just like you and me. Even records that came from temple work came from ordinary people like you and me, because who gave the temple the information to do the work? It was the submitter, the family, who submitted the person. So the truth is that the quality of the information on the names in Family Tree varies widely depending on who put the name in, how much research they did, what type of sources they had, and so forth. So we as users need to verify the information of those names that we find. And the last point to consider is that Family Tree is open edit, and that means that any user, any registered user, can change anything with the exception of those locked records. I've had some people say to me, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Why does Family Tree allow that?" But you know what? They tried it the other way. And for those of you who used the old program, which was called New, not new anymore, but called New Family Search, you remember that we couldn't change information. All we could do if we found that something was incorrect is we could add the correct information, but everything still showed up. So you ended up like some of my relatives would show up with 20 or 30 birth dates and 15 birthplaces of varying names and so forth. And so they it just turned out to be such a mess, and people were complaining, saying, "I need to correct this and I can't. Why are you just making me add an opinion when I really need to fix the data?" So Family Search weighed the pros and cons and said, you know what, if we're ever going to get this record, Family Tree, to be, quote, worthy of all acceptation, as it says in the Doctrine and Covenants, we've got to work together to clean up the family tree. And so that's why our system is open edit. And it keeps getting better all the time, to be honest with you. I see people doing a better and better job of adding sources and cleaning up information. And sure, some people are still putting incorrect information on, but it's all part of the effort to clean it up. And I would recommend don't be stressed over it, just be grateful that we've got this wonderful, wonderful tool that allows us to prepare temple names and clean up our human pedigree. So with that as background then, what is the value of adding sources in Family Tree? Well, because anybody can change anything, it is very important for us to provide evidence of why we think something is correct, and a source will do that. So if I want to show that my ancestor's birth date is correct, if possible, I attach a birth record or a christening record, and it shows that that information is right. Also, it's been proven that adding sources helps reduce incorrect changes. Now, that's not always true. I have seen people put incorrect information into a record even when there was a source that showed the correct information. But let me give you an example of what happened to me a few months back. I came to a record that I had researched, a person in Family Tree, and somebody had changed my information. How dare they, right? And so I was like, wow, I was indignant and I was totally ready to change that back. But fortunately, I stopped and thought, okay, you know what? I need to follow my own advice and I need to see what's really going on with this. So I checked the sources that this person had added, and guess what? They were right and I was wrong. So they had corrected information that I had put in incorrectly, and they had provided a source that let me know that what they did was correct. So I was so grateful to them and grateful that I hadn't rushed to judgment and I didn't make an incorrect change. So sources are very valuable for that reason. Also, it helps others know what research has been done. Another advantage is it helps you remember what you've done. And I kind of alluded to that earlier. When I come back to a record that I worked on years ago, I'm not going to remember necessarily what I did. So adding those sources will help you remember how you came to the conclusions that you did on that person. And then finally, one of the greatest benefits to adding more names, or excuse me, adding more sources, is that it often leads to more names. You might find siblings that you didn't know about, or parents that you didn't know about. Maybe a cousin was listed as a witness on a wedding or something like that. So if you add sources, you and other people may be able to find more names of people who need to be added to Family Tree. Okay, we are to our last pre-submitted question here. And this one was from Brenda, and she was asking about why and how we should standardize dates and places in Family Tree. So let's tackle the why first. It reduces confusion. You probably have run across records in Family Tree that have odd abbreviations. For example, I saw a record that was for Delaware. It used the postal abbreviation DE. Not that that's odd, but it was different than spelling the whole thing out. And then I saw another record for Delaware that was DEL, period. Then another one did spell the whole name out. Another one might be Della, DELA. And so you can imagine if you have all these random abbreviations for places or all these, short months, long months, are we using the European date standard where we put the day first in the month? Are we following the American one where we put the month first and then the day? All these differences just lead to confusion. So using standards reduces confusion. Also, a huge benefit is that when we use standardized dates and places, it makes searches and hinting work better. So, how do we standardize dates and places in Family Tree? It's not exactly obvious, but it is really easy. So let's walk through how to do that. The first thing you do is, and we'll show it with a date here, but you could do the same thing with a place. So the first thing we do is click the date that we want to change. So I click that, and this little screen opens up, or this little box, I should say, opens up, and I've got an edit button over here. So I click the edit button, and what it does is take me to a place where I can edit the date. Here's the trick that I learned from a friend at FamilySearch. He said the best way or quickest way to get, or I guess easiest I should say, I guess it's easy and quick. Easiest and quickest way is to click at the end of that non-standard date. And the reason this is non-standard is because it's both capitalized and abbreviated. So I click at the end of that non-standard date and I get this drop down. Well, in this case, there's only one choice. Usually for dates, there's only one choice. But for places, you might have quite a few choices. So you, did I say click the space bar? I just spaced out on that, not to be punny or anything. But yeah, you click at the end, hit your space bar, and it drops down this list of standards. So then you click the standard that is correct, and it is populated into the field. And I didn't have room to put the save button on. I apologize, but there's a save button down here at the bottom of this screen where we've been editing, and you just click save, and then that standard appears. So that brings us to the end of our pre-submitted questions. And Braden, what other questions do we have?
All right, so there's a couple in here, and if I don't get these questions quite right, please resubmit them so I can we can answer them a little better. So Scott, he asked a couple different things, but they all are along the same lines. He said, I didn't see a place to be able to mark a file that says I have to see it at the FHL or Family History Center. And he kind of clarified. He said, I wanted to print out a listing of those items I can only see at a specific center, but I couldn't find a way to save and then print.
That is a great question. And as I think, let me make sure, Scott, that I know what you're talking about. I'm envisioning in my mind the catalog, the FamilySearch catalog, where you can go in and you see that little lock icon over the camera that lets you know that that can only be accessed at a family history center. If you've looked up a film and you get to the point where you can see, so if you looked up a film in the catalog and you get to the point where you can see all the different pieces of that film, and they will usually have similar kind of sequential numbers. If you're on that screen and you see the little camera icon over to the right and you see the key above it, you could use your browser's print function to print that. I don't know of any way to print which ones are available at which centers. What you could do is go up to the top of that list, and again, envisioning that catalog screen, and then choose the location that you're interested in, maybe Riverton Family History Center, then only films at Riverton would show up, and you could go ahead and just print it Family History Center by Family History Center. I don't know of any way to do all of them and just show which film is where, but maybe that would be a good workaround. If I didn't understand your question correctly, Scott, please post again, and I'll try and do a better job of answering. Thank you.
Okay, next one says, how do you fix multiple husband and wife listings that are duplicates?
So that's a really great question. If they are true duplicates and not just loops or bad relationships, then the easiest way that I've found is I will go to the person page that has the best information. So the one with the most complete, most accurate dates and places and family relationships. Then I'll go over to the side, the right-hand side, and I'll click possible duplicates. A true duplicate will oftentimes show up there. And if it does, I just click Review Merge and I go through the merge process. If it doesn't show up there, then I go ahead and try to, I find the PID of the person that I want to merge into my good record. So then I go to my good record, I click Possible Duplicates, and there will be a tab that says Merge by ID. So I go ahead and click Merge by ID, and then I copy in that ID of the duplicate, and then I go ahead and go through the merge process. And I apologize that I can't really demonstrate that on the screen. If I had some duplicates right at hand, then I could, but it would probably take me a long time to find some duplicates to merge just for our demo here. So I hope that answers the question, but if it doesn't, please post a follow-up.
Okay, the next one is from Christine. She says, I know where the blog is. There was a link to the latest changes. Is that link still available?
Yes, as far as I know, it's called What's New now. Let me go over to Family Tree. If it will let me go there and see if it's still okay. I believe it used to be on a menu, but I wonder now. I am not seeing it. And so I would like to turn that question back to the audience. Let me check Get Help just in case. Ah, there it is. Okay, so now apparently What's New has been moved to the Get Help dropdown. So that's where you can find it. Thanks, I just learned something. I appreciate that question, Christine.
Okay, and the next question is also from Christine. She asked, why insist on United Kingdom for British records, Ireland, Scotland?
Oh, now that's a good question. So this is my understanding of it from doing English research. The United Kingdom came into being around 900 BC, if I remember correctly. So before that time, it didn't exist. So if you're doing a place, and most of us won't be doing places before 900 BC, but if you did, you would choose the place without the UK option. If you're doing it afterwards, the UK is part of the geographical hierarchy, if you will. So that kind of goes along with the question of standardizing, that when we follow that standard, it just makes it easier for the hinting to work and also for the search engine to find matches. So great question. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Susan asks, when FamilySearch or another user has added a person, say another child, to a set of parents, and I would like to start a conversation about this person or fact, is it possible to do
Oh,
so?
that is a fantastic question because do you know what? For the longest time, it wasn't very easy to do, but Family Tree listened, or Family Search listened to our feedback and they implemented a way to do that. First, let me show you the older way, but the trouble is that people often would miss this. And so I still think it's a good way to do it. And so, but a lot of times people just didn't see it, and that is to start a discussion. So you can just click Add a New Discussion, and then you can put something like, who is Sarah Jane or whatever, and then write your question down here. Now, of course, you might wonder why people don't see that, and I think the reason is just that often they don't scroll that far down on the page. I still would recommend putting the discussion here just because people might see it and it's a good way to document. But here's the cool thing that FamilySearch did. They implemented internal messaging. And this is especially helpful if the person, maybe you've clicked their information and it doesn't have an email address. So you really have no way to get in touch with them. So what you do is click messages, and then or actually I take that back. I'm misspeaking. When you click messages, it gives you a list of your correspondence. But if you wanted to contact somebody by message, what you do, and gosh, I hope I can see, the trouble is here. Well, I guess I guess it'll illustrate with me. I was going to say all it's going to do is show me as the contributor on this particular record, but that should still work. So sorry, that probably totally isn't making sense. It will in just a second as I demonstrate it. So when you want to contact somebody who has added, so like suppose that person had added the child and you questioned where that child had come from, the contributor will be listed as you click on that child. So in fact, you know what? Let's just actually, this is a source, but let's actually go to a child. So I'm going to come to this James Rose, and I want to know who contributed it and get in touch with them to ask them why they did it, or maybe what their sources are, or whatever. So probably the easiest way to do that would be to come here into latest changes. So I've actually changed the order of my boxes here. You can do that by clicking this little gear thing, but we won't go into that now. The reason I mention it though is that your uh, latest changes box might not be in the same place. But I want to go to latest changes, and then I want to go to show all. And then the person who created these changes show up in reverse chronological order. So the newest changes are first. So I want to see who created this record. So I'm going to scroll clear down to the bottom. And that should show me who created the record. Well, in this case, it was me. And that's why I kind of stumbled earlier. I was saying, well, why do we want to click on me? But it'll show you the principle of the thing. So when you see this person who created the record, you can go ahead and click on it, and it brings this pop-up. Now, in my case, I've listed my email address, but many times people don't list their email address. So in that case, you click Send a Message. And that opens up a screen where I love this. What Family Tree does is it assumes, since I was on James Rose's page, that I want to email about him. And so it just gives me this form, says what the email is going to be about, lets me put in a subject, lets me write the message, and then I click send. And send isn't going to show up until I have written something. But once I click send, then even if I can't see the email address, FamilySearch sends that to the person at their email because they had to provide an email to sign up for FamilySearch. They just chose not to make it public. So that is how you can send a message to somebody who has added a child in Family Tree. Great, great question.
All right. I think Sandy asked if you were going to be a Roots Tech.
I am. I'm not presenting this year, but I will be there, and I'm so looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Roots Tech is always a lot of fun. So if you can make it, definitely give it a shot. It's really neat. So I think our next one is from Diane. She asked, when standardizing dates and places, a box appears requesting to know why you changed the date. Is it okay to just put standardizing and the date?
Oh my goodness, Diane, that is such a great question. And all I can do is give you my opinion on it. So let's look at here. Suppose that I wanted to standardize James's date. Suppose it wasn't standard. So I click on this, and eventually it comes up. Then I click Edit. Oh my goodness, this is slow, huh? And so let's suppose that I've changed this. But the thing is, the reason statement is asking why this information is correct. It's not asking why I standardized a date or why I changed a date. And so I have seen a lot of people do that. I wouldn't recommend doing that. That is a reason why you made the change. It's not a reason why this information is correct. So what I would do if you have standardized this, I would take an opportunity to explain why it's correct. So maybe indicate that there's a civil registration for this person, and there's a christening record, and they show the correct parents, and it's the correct time frame or correct date, whatever you want to say that provides evidence that this information is correct. So that is a very, very good question. Thank you so much.
And then I think a follow-up question to that, she asked, will it leave the change if I don't put anything
Yes,
there?
it will. Family Tree does not force you to put in a reason statement. Good question.
Okay, next one is from Kathryn Schultz. She says, could you talk in general about my complicated question I sent, even if the details wouldn't be
Oh my
helpful?
goodness, Kathryn, I actually meant to email you beforehand. Yeah, I couldn't really think of an easy way to cover your question in the webinar. Um, Basically, she has a conflict with a last name of somebody on her tree. She's found some sources, she believes, that substantiate this. And Kathryn, please correct me if I'm explaining this incorrectly. But somebody else is asserting that a maiden name is different based on a single statement in a state history. And as we know, state histories tended not to be quite as accurate as vital records. There's a lot of hearsay and stuff. They're really good for clues, but oftentimes they were not carefully researched. So Kathryn was pretty sure that her information was right until, and we both just had to laugh over this, that she found a probate record that muddied the whole situation. And so now it's not at all obvious which name is correct. And so, Kathryn, I guess my advice on that, oh my goodness, it's hard when you've got conflicting records. And the other thing is she wanted to find a marriage record that would show the maiden name, but has not been able to. She searched extensively and has not been able to find this record yet. And it may, it may not exist. It may have been burned or destroyed. It may have not been indexed or whatever yet, but for whatever reason, she hasn't been able to find this. And so I guess my recommendation would be, number one, obviously keep looking. No newsflash there, right? But another thing that I found is really helpful in situations like this is making it a matter of prayer and possibly even fasting and asking in the temple. So what I love about the temple is that it's very easy to hear inspiration there, much easier, at least for me, than it is outside the temple. So I have gotten inspiration on problems in genealogy in the temple that I don't think I would have gotten outside the temple. So that's one thing to try. And then prayer and fasting, of course, gives power to our requests and our efforts. And then another thing, um, it just totally went out of my mind. So I had three things as I was explaining the others. So maybe I'm not supposed to say it, but if it comes back to me, I'll say it again. But I guess that's what I would recommend, is to take that spiritual approach. Oh, I did just remember what I was going to say, is sometimes when I've been roadblocked on somebody, and then okay, this is what I tend to do. I get roadblocked on somebody and I get determined, dang it, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to try so hard and I'm going to try all these avenues and I'm going to research everything I can think of and I'm going to email my friends who know about this place or time period or whatever. But you know what's interesting about that is that when I have calmed down and let go of my agenda and I've asked Heavenly Father what He wants me to do, there's been quite a few times that He's said, let this go for now. Try and work on something else. So I remember one particular time when I did that, and I came back to it a few years later, and all of a sudden, like literally within minutes, I clicked the Ancestry logo on the person page. And when I did, I got taken to Ancestry and immediately found the records that I had been searching for. It turned out that Ancestry had just added them. So before, a couple years back, I would have been spinning my wheels looking for those records, but Heavenly Father knew that it was better for me to focus on other things in the meantime, so I did. And then when the time was right, I felt prompted to go back to that family and found the records immediately. So that's an option, is ask Heavenly Father if that's really where you should be searching. If He says yes, then by all means persist and fast and pray, ask experts. Another thing you could do, Kathryn, is I believe you're not living in Utah, if I remember correctly. So one thing you could do is to call the Family History Library and in Salt Lake and ask if you could talk with one of their experts in the area where you're having the problem, and they might have some suggestions for you. So speaking in general terms, those are things that I might try given a complicated problem such as you described. So I hope that's helpful. And if it's not the answer you were hoping for, please post a follow-up and we'll follow up.
All right, thank you for that one. And if anybody else has any tips, feel free to put those into the comments and give her some ideas. That's always really
Yes,
helpful to get collaboration is always great.
absolutely.
Uh, and Kathy, she said, you said the United Kingdom came into being about 900 BC. Is that really correct? Shouldn't it be 980?
Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. Yes, you're absolutely right. I was picturing my little timeline in my mind and I looked at AD and I said BC. I looked at BC and said AD. Oh my goodness, it's like when I get left and right mixed up. No, you're absolutely right. It's AD. It is not BC. Thank you so much, Kathy, for correcting that.
Okay, that was, and then Christine asked if anything below 1500 gets requested for standardization.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but are you asking if FamilySearch standardizes dates before the 1500s? My understanding is yes, but given that I've never been able to edit a medieval record, I don't know that for sure, but I would assume that FamilySearch would follow their standards regardless. If anybody in our audience today knows the answer to that question, please feel free to post it. That's just my best understanding.
All right, and Sandy asks if you speak at Family Discovery Days.
I do actually. I love doing that. So yeah, if you were asking that question in case you wanted me to come sometime and speak at a Discovery Day, please do email me. I'll show my email at the end of the presentation, and I always love doing that. And I also am available. I live in Utah in the Salt Lake Valley area, so I'm available to talk around the valley. And I've also come to wards on occasion for, oh, they don't call it enrichment anymore, whatever we call it these days, right? Midweek Relief Society. So I can come to those types of meetings or family home evenings or anything like that. So yeah, please do feel free to shoot me an email if that's what you would like.
All right, as far as I can tell, I think that is all of the questions we have received so far. If I happen to miss one of the questions that got submitted, please resubmit it so that we can get it answered before we end. But I believe that was everything up to this point.
Sounds perfect. Thank you, everybody. What a great session today.
All right. So we'll just continue on. We've got, well, let's see, maybe there's another one. Annette says, my great-grandfather arrived at Ellis Island, but was sent back since he was deemed an LPC. Is there a way to track him back to Europe?
He was sent back to Europe? Gosh, so if I understand you correctly, how sad. I'm just thinking how sad that he arrived here and had all these hopes for a new start and got sent back. I would believe the best way to track that would be to try to find him on a ship's passenger list. And it's very likely if he came through Ellis Island that he also left through there. He probably wouldn't have gone someplace else to board a ship. And so that's probably what I would look for, is a ship heading the other direction. If I didn't understand your question correctly, please follow up.
All right. Looks like we still have a couple of people
great.
typing, maybe not. So Annette asks again, do they have ship lists departing from Ellis Island? I thought it was only incoming that were
That's
available.
a really great question. What it depends on is who made their records available. So I have seen ships manifest going from America to England on Ancestry.com. I do believe, and I'm just concluding this from what I've seen, I believe that they focused more on ships' passenger lists coming from England to America or from Europe to America, just because most genealogists are going that direction rather than trying to trace ancestors from America back. But somebody has that ship's passenger. Well, let me say this. Somebody at some time probably had a ship's passenger list. Whether they made it available to be microfilmed or whether someone did microfilm it is another question. So yeah, you're right. It's less likely in my experience that you'll find a passenger list going the other direction, but I have seen them on occasion. And I actually don't know if Ellis Island kept any kind of records going the other way. It might be worth it to go to their website and send them an email and just ask them if they have anything like that, or if they know who might. Very good question.
All right, and Diane just posted a link to that she says can help out with stuff.
Awesome.
With passenger lists from Ellis Island as well. So that's a good place to check it out, and appreciate the help. Everyone, all the help is great. So Robert made a comment that's pretty good. He says, as a family history consultant, I noticed that most people don't discover settings under their login name. He suggests that you should comment on this.
Oh, Robert, yes, that is such a good suggestion. So up here on your name, under your name, there's a little drop-down menu. So you can go to settings, you can go to your source box, or you can sign out. And this is what Robert was talking about. When you go to settings, you've got all these different options here. So I on purpose clicked away from my first screen because it has confidential information that I don't want to have displayed on this recorded webinar. But you've got all these options up here. You've got your account information. On that screen, you can actually see your helper number and you can change it if you want to. I normally don't recommend that, but if there's a reason that you need to, that's the place where you would do it. You can also, on that screen, show whether you want LDS temple ordinances showing if you are a member of the LDS church. If the reason that can be helpful, for instance, is if you are presenting at a public seminar and you don't want ordinances showing in that particular situation, then you just come, or actually, you know what? I think that might be in preferences. Let's go over there. Yes, it's in preferences. I apologize, I misspoke. So I was trying to remember what was on the account screen and I misremembered. But if you go into preferences, then you can choose not to display temple information, and that can be appropriate in some teaching situations. Another great tab to be aware of is the Connected Accounts tab, where it shows all the free websites that you have joined that are FamilySearch partners. And then let's see, notifications. This just lets you say what you want to be notified about. This will let you know, for instance, or let you set your preferences for how often you want watch notifications. So you know that little star up by a person's name on a person page? If you click that star, it means you're, quote, watching them and that you want to be notified if somebody makes a change to that person. Well, right here, you can say, yes, I want to be emailed, and you can say, yes, I want to, or excuse me, down here, you can say, I want to be notified weekly when somebody changes an ancestor that I'm watching. And then there are these other notifications here. So, Robert, thank you very much for suggesting that. That's a great thing to be aware of, that you can click your name, go into settings, and see a lot of settings for your account.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kathryn, for all of the wonderful help that you've been providing. I believe that's all the questions. If there are any more questions, please feel free to submit them as we continue to move forward. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please take some time to enter in some feedback on today's question and answer session. Let us know what you liked, if there's anything you feel that we could have done better. We really like to make these things as useful as possible for everybody, so the feedback is really appreciated. Um, Also, let us know what topics you would like to hear in the future. And if you get a chance to go to Roots Tech, make sure you stop by our booth, the BYU Family History Library. We'll be there, and we would love to meet you and say hi and talk about some of the stuff we have going on here. Um, we thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope that you have a wonderful weekend and that you can continue to learn and share all of this information with those you come in contact with.